Hi, I'm Matt with HuntDIY, and if you're anything like Zach and I, you're as guilty as we are about not taking care of your boots properly during season and during the off season. So we wanted to take some time today to talk to everybody about sort of the process you go through to get your boots up to speed, ready for the season, and then what you can do mid-season to help keep them in good shape. Basically what happens during the season is your boots get wet and then dry again, wet and then dry again, and that process breaks down the structures in the boot. And if you don't do or take the proper care of your boot to protect them from that wetting, that getting wet and then drying again, it eventually is going to end up cracking your boots, and they're just not going to last as long. And when you're spending the kind of money you do to get really good boots like these Crispies that Zach and I have been using and love, you really want to make sure that you're taking care of them. Whether your boot costs $400 or your boot costs $100, it's absolutely paramount that you do the right things to ensure that the boot will last as long as possible and perform the way you need it to when you're in the field. Because when it breaks down, when you're 10 miles in, the last thing you want are a pair of boots that aren't keeping up with you. So we're going to do a few different things here. First, we're going to clean the boots with a brush and just get all the dirt off of them. These are pretty lightly used at this point. I've worn them around, broke them in town, which is part of my break-in process. I always will take a new pair of boots. I'll put some super feet or soft sole insoles in them, because typically the insoles that come with even the best boots aren't really as good as they could be to maximize the performance of your boot. Then I'll wear them around town on the street for a number of days until they really get broke in as good as they're going to before you take them up into the hills, and then I'll actually start hunting and scouting in them. And these have only got one scouting trip on them, but they did get dirty enough so that we can actually brush the dirt off and actually treat the boot. You really want to treat your boots even before you go out so you can get that protection on them. So first we're going to brush them, and then we'll treat them with a couple of different kinds. One's a conditioner, and then the other actually will bond to the material and protect it from that whole I guess the process is called hydrolysis, of getting wet and then drying, wet and then drying. That what we talked about breaks down the boot material. So what I just did is I used this boot brush, knocked all of the dirt off that had dried and crusted on there so that we could get a pretty clean surface to work with. And then the conditioner that we're going to apply is Nick Wax. We talked to a few different boot manufacturers about that, and the Nick Wax conditioner and then the treatment and proofing just allows for more breathability and works better with the boot material than some of the other chemicals out there that you could be treating the boot with. So before we do anything, we're going to get the boot wet, and then we'll go to apply the boot cleaner. Just want to rinse off all of the loose mud, get everything you can off of it, and make sure that the boot is moist before you put the conditioner on. So we're going to apply the footwear cleaning gel. Just want to make sure that you apply thoroughly. Get it on all the surfaces of the nubuck or the leather. So after step 1 where you got the boot wet and step 2 where you put the conditioner on, now we're going to rinse the conditioner off and make sure that the surface of the boot is damp before we go to apply the final protectant. So I'm just going to dry a little bit of the excess water off here, but you do apply the waterproofing while it's damp. There's a little tab underneath. You just press down to get the flow of liquid coming out. You can see I'm just thoroughly covering all of the leather areas on the boot with this waterproofer and protectant. Just want to squeeze while you apply pressure so you get that foam coming out. Now we're going to remove the surplus treatment from the boot. Okay. Then we're going to get this cloth damp, and then we'll buff it to a shine. Alright, so now we got this damp cloth, and we're just going to get every last bit of the surface buffed off. And it's important to note, it's like, if you don't use your boots much, you can probably just do this before the season starts one time. But if you hunt, you're out in the field as much as Zach or I, you probably are going to want to do this more than once, even mid-season, just to keep them in maximum performing condition. So here's the finished boot. You can see it's nice and clean. We've got all the excess treatment off, and now we're just going to let it air dry before we put it away. It's worth noting again what I said about air dry. You have to make sure always to air dry your boot if you can help it. If you're in the backcountry even, you don't want to dry your boot by any sort of accelerant like a fire or heat, because that magnifies the process we talked about earlier of the breakdown of materials. It's not good for your boot. So once you're done with the process and your boots are away in the box, you want to put them in a place where the temperatures are cool and consistent. You don't get them swinging high and low. Somewhere like a nice room in your house. Put them up in the closet, and they can stay there until you're ready to take them up in the hills.